How's it going, everyone? It is Prashan here, and we have Tucker. Tucker's here as well. How's it going, Tucker?
Hey yo, it is good to be back. We're back and we're in the groove here to help you guys win the weekend.
Yeah, we've had many vacations. One a
hmm
hurricane and one without internet. So we're back. We're back in action. So we have Toxin here. Toxin is the newest card in Marvel Snap. 2-1 on reveal. Return your other cards here and to your hand, +2 power for each return. So it's basically like a Carnage that doesn't eat your cards. I think this is an okay card. Of course, it could be put in bounce. Sometimes you get the card, sometimes you don't. And then in other decks, it's like sometimes you'll use them, sometimes you won't need them. And then later in the game, it's just too late and he just stays in your hand. So, what are your thoughts on this card here, Tucker?
I think this card is very niche, but he's really good in the shell he fits in. Like when it comes to the bounce package, to be able to have another enabler that can also scale in power feels really nice. Something you can kind of play hand in hand with a Falcon or with a Beast as either like an alternative or something also to gain power. I think this card is really solid. I think, but like I said, super niche and like it's very specific in where it's going to perform well in, and other like archetypes it may not be as good, but in bounce, and I like it in like some of the werewolf bounce as well, it feels really solid.
Yeah, I've seen some bounce players get stuck with like Beast and Falcon in their hand on the final turn, and they just lose games altogether. So it's like, I don't know. I think it sometimes it's too bouncy. But we do have some other decks besides bounce. Bounce is in one of the top of the week, but we'll go into some of the others we have here, and we have Toxic Surfer. This is one Tuck recommended here. Came out of nowhere. I think I don't know. Toxic Surfer has always been around, but now it's more prevalent in the higher ranking Infinite players. So, what do you think about this deck here, Tucker?
I think it's kind of made like a resurgence because like Ajax kind of iterations of toxic decks like Toxic Affliction just isn't as popular anymore with all the bounce and stuff happening because bounce kind of does dodge priority. You can't necessarily get the hazmat out on this right turn to be able to get your Ajax as big as you normally want it. And I feel like Surfer always kind of flows under the radar. Yes, there's been a lot of Cosmo recently, but with the addition of Toxin and whatever this OTA was, I feel like Cosmo's kind of gone down just a little bit, so it allows you to do some Surfer things again. And then like what gets crazy is Sarah into the Wong Odin Surfer or Wong Odin Hazmat also just goes for.
Yeah, for sure. I think I don't know. Surfer made somewhat of a resurgence with the whole
Mm-hmm.
like skipping 1, 2, and 3 and playing Wave into the Blink and
Yeah.
Sarah and Onslaught stuff. But this is a solid list. I think this has always been good for the most part. And then of course you're trying to get the big bang at the end with the Hazmat and the Surfer, which is pretty good. So Toxic Surfer. If you guys want to play some Surfer, here it is. And then next we have Discard. This card has came back without Hella this time. This is a deck and cards that came out during our mini vacation. Scorn is pretty solid. This deck here, Scorn, Blade, Morbius, Collector. You basically try to get your Collector and Morbius as big as possible, especially with your Scorn, Swarm, and Apocalypse getting hit over and over. That way, your Morbius is bigger, your Collector is bigger, and Scorn is giving cards on the board a buff, which I think is freaking awesome. And then, like, cards like, I don't know, like Calling Wing, I don't think she gets that much love, but of course, she's perfect in this style of deck. I think the only awkward thing I feel sometimes with these like discard decks is like whether or not when to put out Dracula. Like, do you not put out Dracula, or like do you just leave them in your hand and let them be dusted by Modoc, and then you let like I don't know. Like sometimes it's like I don't know how it works, but sometimes it does work. So what? How do you feel about this deck?
So I absolutely love this list. I've been an avid discard enjoyer for ages, and I'm so glad that discard actually has a spot in the meta again. What I think is the best part about this list actually is your collector can still get pretty big without having to have the helicarrier in this list. I think helicarrier kind of in some instances is really good for discard because it allows you to discard stuff multiple times. It can give you some value for potentially Morbius and collector. But I don't like having to hit Helicarrier at the end of the game, and then your Dracula doesn't have that opportunity to hit your Apocalypse or hit the Scorn. So I like in this iteration, you kind of swap that out. You still have the Gambit to be offensive. If you don't draw your Apocalypse, your Scorn can still get really huge. Your Dracula gets the concurrent power of the Scorn as well as the other 2 power onto another card on the board. So it's similar in that sense to having like the old Chavez back in discard, which just feels really good. Because you also, if you have a big Scorn and you have a big Apocalypse, you can throw the Apocalypse on the board, and then your Dracula just absorbs the Scorn at the end of the game, and then you're having so many just different options. It just feels like it's more versatile now. And like you said, Colleen Wing has an even better target than just Swarms now. Like the Scorn value really can get immense.
Yeah, for sure. Like that. I'm glad to play it. There's been many like variations of it. I know Nerf Herder has one. Like I've been playing Nerf Herder discard decks to be honest for the past like week.
Oh, the Lockjaw one?
Yeah, that one goes crazy too. And then next we have Agent Venom, Darkhawk. I feel like Agent Venom is OP. I've been seeing it on Twitter and Discord. Everyone wants this card to be nerfed. And then there's others that don't want it to be nerfed because it was a season pass card, and we keep on nerfing season pass cards because they become too OP. But this is one of the top Agent Venom decks. Of course, it's a Darkhawk deck. Darkhawk has been reigning supreme ever since Airsham has been around. And this one is just another solid list. I've seen iterations instead of Absorbing Man. There's like Iron Lad instead. Instead of the Grandmaster, you could put in Misery if you want as well. This deck is pretty flexible on what you could put in and take out. And overall, it's a pretty awesome deck, like especially with Agent Venom. He has so many good targets, the Cassandra, the Mystique, the Iron Man. Those are awesome targets for your Agent Venom.
Yeah, this list overall, like I was playing an Agent Venom shell in the Gauntlet last weekend too. Like it just feels so good because it hits all your mid-range cards. Anything that just doesn't have 4 power, like anything less, literally just profits from Agent Venom. You get Cassandra Nova on curve without any rocks in your opponent's deck. She becomes a 3/10 after getting hit with Agent Venom. It feels really good, and especially into this list, I like that people are diversifying it and everything too. Like Absorbing Man instead of Cosmo. There's no Juggernaut in this list. Like, even though Rockslide did get hit with the OTA going to a 4/5, it's like OG Rockslide all over again, which you were kind of still playing at a 4/5, but of course Darkhawk was 4 cost at that point. But I'm glad to see like Grandmaster getting value. Black Widow is super annoying and it kind of offsets what people are doing with their bounce shells, and like that's really good to like mess around with. There's a Phoenix Force iteration of this list going around. It doesn't have the Agent Venom, but it has like Misery, Rockslide, the Hood, and everything. And then they're bringing the stuff back with the Phoenix Force, and it's going freaking crazy. Jet made that last week. But it's interesting to see whenever Darkhawk's prominent in the meta, there's all sorts of other things happening. It's not like super like demeaning like some of these other lists when they're super dominant. It doesn't feel like you can play stuff. It just, it's a disrupt deck, but it doesn't feel like it's the worst thing.
Yeah, especially since there's so many cards in this deck that you could play on curve. It just feels pretty good to play, just set and play, as long as you're playing it in the right spot. And then next, another card this season. It seems like this season has a pretty solid lineup so far. Scream here, Scream with the move and the disruption. There's so much going on with this deck to disrupt your opponent. You have Polaris, you have Juggernaut, you have Spider-Man, you have Arrow. Stegron is finally getting the love he deserves in the game. You have Cannonball, Magneto. You're just moving their cards back and forth, disrupting their game, while your cards like Scream is gaining power, and then their cards are losing power. You have Kingpin here, and then you have Kraven that has tons of value in this deck as well. Overall, a pretty solid deck, especially like in this meta too, right? When people are just bouncing things around, they want to do certain things or bounce 3 or 4 cards back into their hand, but they can't. But yeah. Well, what do you think about this deck here, Tuck?
The disrupt actually just feels good, and it's good to see that Silk actually has like a home again. Because like for a while, Silk just was unplayable because it was just like it's just 2/5 power that's just gonna lose me the game. But like in this instance, like you're saying, there's so many people that are trying to fill lanes to be able to get their combo going. They're trying to bounce stuff back. They're trying to destroy stuff. They're trying to dodge Cosmos. They're trying to dodge locations. But like you have Juggernaut to move stuff around. You got Polaris to move stuff around. Spider-Man, of course, still like I think Spider-Man. I feel like could be tweaked again to make him a little bit more consistent. But still, moving it to a random lane, your opponent has to guess where is this going to land, kind of thing. I also wish the Scream and Kingpin change didn't happen. I wish it still hit unrevealed cards because I feel like that really wasn't too overbearing. But I understand mechanically they want people to it be fluid. But it is really good, like you said, to see a lot of these cards actually have play. And like for a while, they just were unplayable because the meta they just didn't have the right shell for them. It just felt like I'd rather play something else in this slot. But disrupt works, as we were talking about Darkhawk earlier. You're disrupting their deck there. You're disrupting their board space here. They can't necessarily plan their next move. And Cannonball still is pretty good post Professor X change. He's just not as used as he was.
Yeah, especially if you have Scream and Kingpin on the board, or if they have every single lane or the other 2 lanes filled. Like Cannonball has tons of value. And then next, we have another Agent Venom deck. This is going to be the theme of this week. This one has Bast as well. So, of course, if you play Bast on turn 1, all the cards in your hand get +3. And if you play Agent Venom on turn 2, all of the cards in your deck get +4. So you're getting that extra power either way. You don't have as much value, of course, with the Bast, but you make up for it with Agent Venom. And we're seeing Iron Man, Mystique, and Cassandra again. Athena gets tons of value too if she was in your deck. Either or, getting hit by Bast or getting hit by the Agent Venom. And then, of course, there's the Claw Iron Man Mystique combo that everyone's been hitting as well. And then the Cosmo is just here to protect either the Iron Man or the Claw. That way, you don't get rogued or Enchantress. Enchantress is a card I haven't seen in a minute. There's been more rogues out there than Enchantresses, but this is the best deck here for Agent Venom, I feel, for the most part. What do you think, Tuck?
It is the best deck for Agent Venom because just consistency wise, like no matter when you play Agent Venom, you're gonna get value. Even though I like the Darkhawk shell personally more, I know this one is better because with the Darkhawk shell, you still have to put the rocks and have stuff to be able to get Darkhawk value in the list. Whereas this right here, you're able just to play it naturally. There's still a lot of Airstream going around, so you're getting Cassandra value. You're having Cosmo to be able to alternate things. Speed is just a really solid card to have. And I think what makes like Bast really good in this list, yes, maybe your Claw or maybe your Agent Venom gets hit in your hand by a Bast, but if it hits a Mystique, it hits Athena, it hits a Cassandra, it hits the Iron Man, any of those options, you just literally profit. You can save it later too to be able to hit your arrows you get from Kate Bishop so they can get value. Like it's just super flexible, and it feels like there's so many different ways you can run into it no matter what matchup you're into. It makes it feel like it's maybe the best deck in the game.
Yeah, I think when I probably try to go on my infinite climb for next season, I'll probably use this as my pathway to 100 here. But I really do think this might be the best deck in the game. And then I was thinking too, if someone's playing rocks against you, and like for instance a Korg on 1, like you play Agent Venom on 2, that rock is a 1/4.
Yep.
So like going against the mirror or going against Darkhawk decks too with this deck, like you definitely have an advantage. And then next we have the best bounce deck in the game here, but this one does not have Toxin. No Toxin. Agent Venom again. Agent Venom has tons of value, especially with hitting cards like the Hood, Rocket Raccoon, Silver Sable, even hitting that Mysterio, Bishop, Sage. The only problem I have with this deck is on the final turn, I don't put Sage or Hitmonkey in the right spots. For some odd reason, I always lose because I have them like flipped or something, even though they do bring high value, but I don't know. That's my only problem with this deck. The math doesn't isn't always on my side with Sage or Hitmonkey. But overall, I think this is a solid list.
Yeah, this list is really good. I think when it comes to bounce, especially right now, there's so many mirror matches, so you have to play a bunch of 50-50s. So like what Prashant's talking about, like maybe Hitmonkey or Sage and the quote unquote wrong spot, it's just you guessed wrong. It's not like a literally like a player error. It's just like it could have gone this way or it could have gone that way. And that's just how it feels with bounce. You literally have to like use your brain, Sheen brain it, you may even say. Like you just literally have to be thinking at all times, mapping everything out. If this happens, that happens, which is why they play it at such a high level. And of course, like you said, Agent Venom hitting Mysterios, you have 4-power Mysterios in every single lane. Like that's a 212. You don't really get 212s like that. You know, like Doctor Doom's great. Miss Marvel was a great card when she had a 4/5. She's still okay right now. But like the value you can get there is just immense. And like the Agent Venom just things, and like Bishop being a 3/4 to start, Sage being a 3/4 to start. Like there's so many different ways you can play into just good matchups or just play around anything. Black Swan's actually getting value in here too. So when you Falcon one lane, you beast another lane, you're playing everything for free. Like it's just really solid.
Yeah, a very solid list. This one doesn't have Toxin. I don't know. Sometimes I think it's too much bounce, and like I was saying earlier, like sometimes you get stuck with those cards at the end of the game, and you can't play a Hitmonkey, or I mean, you can't play a Beast on the final turn because you're just bouncing everything back, or you can't play Falcon on the final turn because all those one drops just come back. So just be careful on how you're playing, and I suggest just play them in the early game, and then especially Black Swan. Black Swan helps out a lot. So that being said, with all of these decks here, Tucker, do you feel like this card here is going to get nerfed?
So like if they do it this season like they do pretty much any season, the season pass is going to stay OP for the entirety of the season because they want to sell season passes. And then they'll tweak Agent Venom. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to a 3/4. Maybe that's a little bit much, but they may just take some power off of him instead. But we were talking about it before the season came out. People were so low on this card. Why is this going to be a season pass card? And look where we're at now. Look where we are at now.
Yeah, 2 times value, 3 times value for
Yeah.
Agent Venom. So that is it for this week. Thank you all for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe. Tucker's info will be down below, so make sure you go to his channel and subscribe as well. Till next time, be safe, keep on snapping, and peace out.